Am I gonna leave that in there? That was a, well, I'm not gonna leave that in there. What's good, you guys? Welcome back to my channel. Today, we are talking books. We're talking some of my favorite books that I've been reading the past few months. And when I say favorite, I don't exactly mean 5-star, but I mean the books that I've been telling people I would totally read that book. And there have been a lot of heavy hitters. I think I actually posted about that on Threads the other day. Like, I've been just, almost every book I've read, with like the exception of like 2, have been heavy hitters that have made me go, oh my God, you need to read this book. And so what a better way than to make a video to share with y'all the books that I've been enjoying the past few. I need to come up with an official title. I feel like saying the books I've been enjoying the past few months is a lot to say. So we'll just say my favorite recent reads. How about that? This will probably be the last one of 2024, but I do have another video that I'm hoping to record before the year is up. It'll be kind of a fun spin on like the trope of like people read so many books, but you ask them the plot and they can't tell you. And by the way, if you're new here, welcome to my channel. My name is Kiera. I really enjoy having new people join my community. So if you're here watching, I appreciate you and thank you. Let me know if you're new. If you're not new, you already know what to do. We got drinks in the back of the camera. All right, so without further ado, let's get into some of my favorite recent reads. Our first book we have is Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. Now, this book is a dystopian book set in the future, well, kind of in the now, because it takes place in like 2017 through 2024 or something like that. Like it mentions, it basically happening right now. And it's a super realistic, to me, it's like a super realistic dystopian novel that I've read. And it's about the future of what has happened when the country as we know it is no longer as we know it. And so we're following this main character who is basically fighting to survive, fighting for survival. It's a black main character, black female main character, and we're following her as she journals, as she endures what comes from this new world. And so it's been highly talked about lately because of the recent election. And in the sequel to the book, I think it was supposed to be a 3-part, but she passed before she could actually publish it. But in the sequel, there's actually a president whose slogan is to make America great again. So there's a lot of factors that go into the book, and it's not like a thriller or a suspense. It's a very sci-fi dystopian novel that I enjoyed reading. It was a lot. I did have to take several breaks because it just felt too realistic. It was like, you know, our civilization, the way we know it, our modern civilization just kind of plummeted. You know, things are still accessible. There's still a government, there's still law enforcement, there's still services like firefighters and police officers, but they come at a price. If there's a fire, you call the fire department, but you get a bill. And you know, if you're trying to get somewhere, you probably won't drive because gas is out of budget for you. So you have to walk. And I enjoyed that read again because it was a cool reflection to see the world we're in now and the state of the world we're in now and the world that Octavia Butler had created in Parable of the Sower. I think I gave that book 4 stars. But yeah, great book. Honestly, don't know if I would read it again because it was a lot. And I've heard the second book is more than the first book. So proceed with caution. Next up, we have Funny Story by Emily Henry. Funny Story was a very fun book for me. It's one of those like romance books. I want to say it was like a super recommended book on my Goodreads. I saw a lot of people with the book. The book cover is awesome. I love how it's designed. But basically we're following 2 main characters, female and male. They have both been put together in a funny way. And that's because both of their partners left them to be with each other. And so we follow their story pretty much from the breakup of them with their partners all the way through. It comes pretty much full circle all the way through what happens as a result of that. And obviously it's a romance, bit of a slow burn for me, but it wasn't too much of a slow burn. Like, I loved hearing the inner dialogue of both main characters. And, you know, it's just like, it is a funny story because you're like, this is the craziest thing to happen, and the audacity of their partners to behave such a way. But they do it anyways. It's nice to see the people who got the short end of the stick of the situation come out on top. Now, with a lot of romance books that I read, I have a pet peeve for like situations that could easily be avoided with communication. And in this book, there was a little bit of that where I was like, oh my God, all you had to do was send a text. All you had to do was call. All you had to do was this. But you know what? As I've been going through my relationship with my husband, I often find that we also have those things where I'm like, if this was a book right now, I would be yelling at me saying, all you had to do was this. All you had to do was send the text. So I'm trying not to be as picky or as critical of the characters, because, you know, it's easy to say what you would do when you're not in the situation, especially when it's a book, you know. So yeah, funny story, great book. Next up, Mystic River by Dennis Lehane. The cover of this book was presented, I think, on my Goodreads as like a newer book. When I saw it, the book cover looked a lot more modern and a lot more like today's like latest mystery and suspense books are. But as I got to reading and as I got to like talking to amongst the social media world about the book, it came out in like the early 2000s or the 90s, the late 90s, and there's actually a movie. There's a movie about it. So basically it starts out like there's two different timelines that you're dealing with at first, because it starts out, and I'm not spoiling anything, these are not spoilers, but it starts out that, you know, these three friends are hanging out together, they're young kids playing in the street, and this car comes up with these police officers who end up like interrogating the kids, like, what are you guys doing fighting out here? You come with me because I'm gonna take you home because you don't live around here. They take the kid, take him away. They were not actually police officers, and God knows what happens to this kid. Then they bring him back. Which therapy is needed, okay? They bring him back, and we experience his life as the kid that was taken and brought back by strangers. And in the 90s, there was no PC, there was no political correctness. No one cared about your feelings. You can just imagine the bullying that he went through and stuff. And so that's one timeline. But then you get the other timeline, which is like 20 years later, 30 years later, when the three characters are grown men. One has become a police officer / detective. One is like the guy, he's a baseball player or something. Like it's the guy who got taken, but he's not known as the guy who was taken anymore. He's known as like, oh, a minor league baseball player, or it might be major league, but I think it's minor league. But he's more known for that than the other thing. And then the other one is the neighborhood. The guy who runs the neighborhood, basically. He might have mob ties. Their lives intertwine. Dennis Lehane does a really good job of building suspense. And there's like a gotcha moment of, oh my God, this is what happened. Like, you start putting pieces together and you realize, oh, that's what happened. Okay. And he does a wonderful job of switching points of views. I really like listening to the audiobook. You would be hearing the dialogue of one character, and then it within the same chapter, like, you know how some books they switch chapters and it's like, oh, new POV, cool. Well, in this book you're hearing the dialogue of one person and the feelings and the inner emotions of one person, and then it switches to the person that they're talking to. When you first experience it, you're like, wait, who just said that? But it's a great, you catch on and you start to kind of feel when it's about to shift characters, and it's a good book. It's a good book. Like, I'm gonna watch the movie at some point, and I want to do an analysis of like what I liked about the book versus what I like about the movie. I'm still fleshing that out. Next up is The Grace Year by Kim Liggett. Now, this book is another dystopian. This book was like Handmaid's Tale / like Mean Girls / Parable of the Sower / The Hunger Games. Like, there was a lot happening. But basically, when girls get to a certain age and they become like teenagers, it's believed that they possess this sort of magic that they can make men do things. And so because of this, they send these girls away for a year to get rid of their magic. Now, when I read this, I thought that they send them like into the public world. Like I thought this was like, oh, an Amish community sending their people into the public, and then they come back after a year. And you know, they might not come back. That is not the case. That is not the case. Instead, they send them to like a fenced off location that's still like monitored by guards and stuff, but it's like they lock them up for a year. They're still outside and stuff, but they like have to self-sustain for a year. And it's a group of girls. It's like 30 girls. And so these girls are trying to, and some of these girls too, right before they leave for the grace year, they were presented veils. So that meant that like they had husbands waiting for them when they got back. And some girls who didn't get veils, they would be sent to like camps to work and to do like hard jobs and stuff when they got back from their grace year. And there's a lot more complex, intricate details that went into like the terms and conditions of the grace year, but it was written well. I enjoyed the build up and the internal thoughts of the main character. But you know, there are some books that I feel like some women try too hard. The women are written to try too hard to be seen as like not like the other girls. And at first that was really, I almost did not finish the book because of that, because I was just like, okay, we get it, you're stronger, you're not built for this, you shouldn't have to do this, we get it. But you really start to grow with the character. You start to feel her a little bit. You're like, all right, like obviously no one wants to be sent to be locked up for a year. But yes, I enjoyed the book. I read it. Not sure if I'd read it again, but I definitely enjoyed reading it and I recommended it to my friends. Next up is Sky Full of Elephants by Cebo Campbell. This book was recommended to me from a TikTok that it was a girl and she was like, I'll have to find it. Point of view, all white people walked into the nearest body of water and now it's only black people left in the world. So obviously that's intriguing. So I went to read, and it's set in this, again, dystopian, y'all clearly see I have a type. It's set in this future where something occurred one day where white people stood up and just walked into the nearest body of water. And we get the experience of two main characters. There is a man who was once imprisoned, who was released from prison because, newsflash, when these people walked into the water, the first thing that people of color did was come and break everyone out of prison, because why not? So we follow him, and he's now like a professor at Howard. And then we follow Sydney, who is a mixed girl who grew up not knowing her father. He is her father, but she grew up only knowing her mother and that side of the family, the white side of the family. But she did not walk into the water because she's mixed. There's something in her that did not allow her to walk into the water. So they ended up connecting somehow. I'm not going to ruin it, but I will say Alabama becomes a kingdom. Alabama has a king. That is when I went into, like, I only went into with the premise of white people walk into water. I knew nothing else. And so I want to leave y'all with nothing else with that, because I kind of want you to experience it for yourself. But the dialogue was hilarious. Like, especially, it felt just rich. It felt real. It felt like things you would hear. Like, the girl was asking questions. She was like, why are you doing it this way? Why does this exist? Why? And then one of the black women was like, honey, I learned a long time ago to stop asking why about certain situations. And so, like, that type of dialogue, a type of rich, realistic dialogue that you like, I could imagine saying that, or I could imagine somebody saying that to me in conversation. Like, they're playing spades, they're arguing about dominoes. So it was a black ass book, and I loved it. I would have preferred a different ending, to be quite honest. I would have preferred a more, a more direct ending, but I was satisfied with the book. This was Cebo Campbell's debut album. This was his debut novel, and it was super good. It was well written, and it was also interesting because my husband would hear it every now and then. Like, I'd play it out loud or in the car on the way somewhere, and he was hearing bits and pieces, and he was interested. And when my husband starts liking the book, I'm like, oh, You like this book too? I got taste? Okay. Next, we have Jar of Hearts by Jennifer Hillier. I've talked about Jennifer Hillier before, earlier, either this year or last year. Y'all, this book was so good. I think I finished this book in a day or two. But yeah, it's a thriller. It's a suspense. She writes. I love it. It's mystery. It's, you think you know it. The dialogue is great. There are some content warnings, so please check those out. I'll have them in the description. But it's basically a book about a woman who, why did she go to prison? Why did she go to prison? Oh, yes. It's about a book about a woman. We're in two different timelines. We're in one where she is a teen, and then we're in one where she is in prison and getting out of prison and her life outside of prison. So what happens is we're taken through her life, and when she's a teen, she gets with this boy who may not be super good for her or anyone around him. And so as a result of some of his actions, she ends up in prison. Basically, her best friend ends up dying, and she knew something about the situation and she did not tell anyone. And so it was found out. She was arrested by their then like childhood best friend, who like, it was like a trio of them. It was a guy and two girls. So one of the girls dies. One of the girls does something as an accomplice to her death. And then the guy friend has become a detective. And so even though the one character is getting out of prison, you know, she's no longer guilty for whatever, her and the detective friend, they're not friends, but you know, they meet up and they're trying to figure out something that's happening that resembles what was happening in their teen years. But, you know, and they, you know, I can't get too much into it. So hopefully that's big enough premise for you. But yeah, like she's this main character, like she went on, after her best friend died, she went on to like be this VP of this company. Like she's on top. She had an article written about her. She had her own office. She was wearing heels. She was driving a G-Wagon. She was about to get engaged. She was about to get married. She was about to get married and be set. No, none of that happened. None of it happened because shit hit the fan real fast. Like I was starting to write a review on Goodreads, and I was like, you know what? I would do better talking this out, because it was punchy. It was good. You thought you knew where the book was going. You don't. Or maybe you do if you just that good. But I don't read books to try and figure out the twist. I just like to experience it. But I was definitely like, oh my God, to the point. I don't know if y'all have ever seen those TikToks where people are like reacting to their reading, but I was definitely like, oh shit, that's crazy. And then lastly, we have The Girl Who Was Taken by Charlie Donlea. Quick plug, I have read all of Charlie Donlea's books the past few months. Like, they have been that good. He is an excellent writer of thriller and suspense. He knows how to write to keep you on the edge of your seat. So like there are a few different elements. So in most of his books, there's like a media element. So someone has a podcast, someone has a docuseries, someone is a news reporter looking to break a story. And then there's also like there's always a big plot twist in his books. This is not a spoiler. Like, his plot twists come somewhat, he knows how to deliver plot twists early and still keep the book engaging. Sometimes he might even give you 2 or 3 plot twists. That was just a quick plug. And he writes female characters really well without doing the thing that men can do in writing female characters that make you go like, can you not? Like, so The Girl Who Was Taken by Charlie Donlea is about this girl who was taken. What? Shocker. Not a spoiler. And while she was taken, she escaped her capture. So she was able to be put back into society. She's working with someone who's in forensic science, whose sister was also taken in the same way. So somehow they meet up, they get connected, and they still don't know who has taken this girl. So while working with the forensic scientist girl, they kind of get together and they're like, you know, we can figure this out. And the girl, even though she's a little bit damaged, she's still determined to figure out who took her and why. So the book is them two going down this path together up until the point of finding out who took the girl who was taken. And so I like this book because it really examines like the dynamic between where like when white girls go missing, they get a lot more media coverage versus someone else. Because the girl who was taken, the actual girl, like the main character, she's like the white girl, her dad is like the chief of police or something, like he's a top dog, she's like well respected, she had good grades and stuff. So when she came back, they were like, oh, we don't know how the world would have went on without her. Versus her sister, the forensic scientist sister, she might not have been the best example of like a good scholar or like a prime student. And so when she went missing, you know, the world was kind of like, oh, she's the girl that was taken but never came back. And there's more focus on the girl who came back than the girl who was still missing and was taken and did not get a chance to escape. So that book, great book. And the audiobooks are fantastic. I love it. So yeah, you guys, was that long-winded? I'm sorry. So those were some of my favorite, most recent reads. And I have more on my Goodreads, obviously, so you guys can follow me on Goodreads. I like to track my reading. Like, I like to update my progress as I'm reading. So if something happens, I'm like, yo, like I like to add my commentary as I'm reading. And I hope you guys pick up some of these book recommendations. I'm always looking for more books to read. So if you have any books that are thrillers, fun meet cutes that aren't like exhausting, dystopian sci-fis, I'm really down to read anything as long as the context of the book is good. So if you have any books like that, let me know in the comments. Comment the book emoji and let me know you made it this far. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, but you're interested in seeing more videos like these, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Like I said, I always appreciate having new friends. So come on over to my little corner of the internet. Let me know if you plan to check out any of the books I recommended. And until next time, see y'all later.